comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
Hello, Fortitude audience. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Heather Kittelson, and I am your host. And I am here with my husband, Amos.
Hi.
We are kicking off season 3 with one of my favorite people. Literally one of my favorite people. Someone I have admired and loved for almost a full decade. And yeah, you were a mystery to me, Rebekah Scott.
I like to keep it that way.
I've said that to you multiple times, that I admired you from afar for so long, not realizing that we only lived 5 miles apart, which is
right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what a blessing that God has brought us together on a friendship level. And we share a lot of things with even our kids, similar ages. Mm-hmm. Our husbands are pretty dang awesome. Mm-hmm. We have incredible husbands.
Agreed.
And we have such a passion for the Lord and a spunk and a fire that a lot of people will say that. And the last time I looked, we had a picture together and someone said, you two almost look like you could be sisters. Mm-hmm. So I was like, best compliment ever. Oh. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here today. We're really excited to have you.
Me too. This will be fun.
So share with our audience, who is Rebekah Scott? Let's not make it a mystery anymore.
Oh, well, I feel like I'm a very open book, and if you Google my name, you'll find a lot of things. So I'm probably not as much of a mystery as some may think. I am Rebekah Scott, and I live on the tri-state border right by Valley Springs, which is not very far from Heather. I grew up West River, which is a total thing in South Dakota, as we know, from Phillip. And then my last 2 years of high school, we actually moved East River. My dad says we moved to greener pastures. And I finished there, and then I went to school at SDSU. But the funny part about that is, or part of the story is, I know with listening to all your podcast episodes, is that experience helped shape my entrepreneurism, if you will, because I watched my dad go through this falling out with his dad after 45 years of farming and ranching. And, you know, when you're a ranch kid, like, you're just married to the land. Like, this is what we do and this is what we love. Mm-hmm. And there we were in like 3 days' time packing up the horse trailers and moving. So with no job, no school, and no home.
Wow.
But we moved in with my grandparents. I mean, I'm not saying my parents were completely, crazy about it. Like, there was a plan. But I watched that unfold and went, wow, like, people can change. Uproot, change things, put feet down and no more, and I super, like, I didn't know it at the time, but now honor so much and so much respect for what my dad was like, enough. Because that generation just, put your bootstraps on and figure it out. And he had just had enough.
And to protect his family, it sounds like, to protect all you all, to get you to a better place. Yeah,
it was way more layered than that. It was not a good place for him. It was okay for us. But I think for him to make the choice for himself was pretty powerful. Really powerful.
And when you say West River, East River, for those who are listening all over the world, it's interesting because people they automatically assume South Dakota is the monument, the presidents in the Black Hills. They all are like, wait, there's a flat.
Mount Rushmore.
Thank you. You knew I was searching for it, didn't you? The monument. Yes. But people do. They think that is South Dakota and that is what we stand for. And it's like, we're way on the other side of South Dakota.
Yeah, we're 5 hours away from
in the biggest city of South Dakota.
And it's a really pretty side of the state. Really nice, hilly, beautiful. And then the Missouri River runs right down the center of South Dakota. Yeah. So that's why we call it East River, West River. And there really is. It's like there's a visual difference in that side of the state, right?
Oh, gosh. There's so many differences. It should have been East and West Dakota.
Yeah.
But it is a big thing. I mean, in our gas stations, we have T-shirts that say us and them.
Really?
Yes. It's all my siblings own them. We're like, yeah, word. And when I moved here and I visit with people and then they get to know me and then they say, where are you from? And I say, I'm from Phillip, South Dakota. They go, oh, West River. Somehow everything makes sense now. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? So I don't know, but it can like profile you very quickly. They're like, oh, now it makes sense.
Rancher? Maybe it's the rancher in you.
I know. I think it was how outgoing we were too. And I think, I don't know, but they were definitely like, oh, or my East River friends would introduce me and be like, yeah, she's from West River. But I'm still really proud of it. I'm like, yeah, and I love that I have both sides of the experience. So anything that I did, any sport, any music, any activity, was really fun because I knew people from both sides. So I'd be hugging my competitor and my current sports team would be like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm sorry, I know them from church camp. And I'm like, we sat around a campfire together. And then they're like, we don't care. We're about to beat them. I'm like, oh, okay. So cool. It provided unique experiences being able to experience both sides of the state and different cultures, if you will.
It is more ranchy on the west side. Like you call it a ranch, right? Mm-hmm. Cowboy hats and horses and ranch. And over here on the east side, it's more farm and trucks and like a corn seed hat.
Sure.
Less cowboy.
We call them rhinestone cowboys. Ooh. I'm so sorry. That's probably insider knowledge. But like, if you're wearing a cowboy hat, but you've never been on a horse, we're like, I don't know about that. Like,
not a real.
I've had to be way less judgmental about that. But yeah, there's just a difference in obviously commodities. Like quite literally in lifestyles, less competitive out there. So the way that I've succeeded, I think, too, is because it's a little bit more competitive, just more people in the nature of the speed of things on the east side of the state is different than the nature out there. Yep.
Yeah. So that's a big change for your parents.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah.
Not just
my mom was born and raised though East River. Okay. So she loved trees and that kind of thing and the community and that sort of thing. Yeah. My dad had some adjusting.
And how old were you when you moved?
17.
Oh, so you were not like 9.
What birth order are you?
I am the baby by a minute. I have a twin sister.
Okay, let's go there.
But I'm the firstborn. Like, I'm the bossy one. Like, for example, I shouldn't paint this as my first thing that I say I'm bossy is I was domineering twin is what they say because she is most likely left-handed, but every time she put the pen in her left hand, I was like, you have it in the wrong hand. So I would take it out and put it in her right hand because I wanted her to fit in so bad. It's like, no, don't do it wrong.
So she is right-handed now?
She's right-handed now, but she can write with both. Okay. And she played sports with both, and I'm positive it was because of me. Sorry, Sarah.
You two have such a beautiful relationship. I would not, unless you two were standing right next to each other, I would not know you're twins.
No. Well, our mannerisms and our voices are the exact same.
Yes.
So people would be like, gosh, I feel like I should know you. And then I'll say, oh, well, do you know Sarah Jensen? They're like, yes. I'm like, that's my twin. So then they know.
She is spunky. She's spunky like you too, which I love. Yeah. So you mentioned church camp already, which I love because this is how you met your husband. Can you tell me about your life now?
I sew and design purses and accessories. Is that what you mean? What my life looks like now?
Yep, because Nick is in it.
Yeah. Yes, I married Nicholas. I met him at church camp when I was 13, and I saw him, and he took my bags to my cabin, which is kind of funny because at our wedding they said he would carry he would have baggage his entire life because I make bags now. It's like, that's funny.
Yeah, it's clever.
It started with a bag.
But it started with a bag. And anyway, so we farm and ranch now here. We have livestock and corn and soybeans and a construction business as well. And then I sew right on our farmhouse in my studio.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which your purses they're very well known.
Think so.
Yep. And you ship out a lot of purses, which we will get into that in a second.
Okay.
And you have 4 kiddos.
Mm-hmm. I have 4 kiddos, a senior, an 8th grader, a 6th grader, and a 3rd grader.
Mm-hmm. When we were going through what we had gone through, I remember Amos saying, do you remember meeting Rebekah Scott? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I think you should reach out to her. I think she has some pretty solid things in life on why she's successful, and I feel like she'd be a great mentor of yours.
And you know why? It's because you're a podcast.
Okay.
Do you still record that in your closet?
No.
Did you ever record in the closet?
Slight upgrade.
Okay.
No, I had foam core set up though.
Okay.
Real professional.
Yeah.
No, I still record in my studio someday. I mean, my sewing studio. Let's correct here. Not a podcast studio, but a sewing studio. Yeah, I set up a microphone and.
What's your podcast name?
The Encourager.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it was because of the Encourager. When we were going through things, you needed encouragement.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, he told me I needed to listen to you. And he said, I highly encourage you to listen to Rebekah Scott's podcast, The Encourager. And so I did. I listened to it quite a bit. And I just remember I was falling in love with you. It's just everything about what you represented. And I thought Amos was right. I'm glad I listened to him. So
good idea.
Okay. So the transition, since you said you're the baby of the four. So let's talk about your siblings. I would love you and I, because of we have multiple things in common, but this whole, what your family went through with your brother and suicide, you have been an advocate in a couple different ways that I would love the audience to hear. But can we talk about your brother and get into the story of what unfolded with your family?
So we made that big move. My two brothers were already in college and attending there. And my oldest brother, Philip, suffered with addictions, as early as high school. I think to this day, and my siblings, I think, would say the same thing, is he had a really gift of discernment. He would walk into a room and know immediately, this one is sad, this one is mad, this one is happy, and this one. And then he would set to change things, try to shift perspectives and cheer them up, and just a really great guy. But it became really overwhelming too, how much feelings he could feel for other people. So I think his addiction started with a way to cope. I don't know this for sure, so forgive me, Joshua and Sarah, if you're like, no, that's not what I think. But that would be my conclusion now, is so sometimes he would become reclusive because it was it's too much. It's so much to understand people on a level they sometimes didn't understand for themselves. So suffered with some different addictions and things like that. And a couple of them landed him in prison. And so we had some Christmases where we went to prison and got him a can of Coke. And we were not on purpose, but we were kind of an entertaining table, if you will, while we sat there, because humor is very important to us. It's probably also a coping skill, but darn it if it isn't a good one. You know what? If you're going to cope, though, humor is a good one. So those were some difficult years, really difficult, especially now as a mother. I'm like, wow. How does my mom and dad, how did they process that? But
did it start, did you see behaviors in high school? Did you see?
I didn't. But
okay.
At that age, I'd like to think we're all like that, but particularly me and Sarah were just in our own worlds. So, and we didn't visibly see anybody fighting or anything like that. So I think I was aware that he was a really cool guy and everybody loved Philip. But I didn't know about the addictions then. It was my junior and senior year when we got the phone call about him going to court that I was like, what do you mean? What's going on? So,
So did he stay West River?
No, he did move with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because he had his own place by then and everything like that. So anyways, a couple different stints there, and he got out, but those addictions still plagued him. But he actually beat some of the ones that people don't often beat, which is meth. And he beat that. He was not addicted to meth or stayed clean. And that's the only reason why that happens, is because he loved God. His Bible was, my dad still has it. It's amazing. It's completely filled in. And at Christmas time, he would repeat the Christmas story, the whole Christmas story, word for word. So that's kind of cool. I wish we would have recorded that so we could hear his voice. But so anyways, man of God in prison for addictions, which brings me to another subject of if I ever got politically involved, which probably would not happen, but I would hope for legislation to get users out of prison and into facilities that can help them with the addictions and why they're actually there, because they're overcrowded mostly because of users. And I don't know that for factual sure, but we obviously have a prison problem. And so to put someone as tender-hearted as Philip in a hard prison for multiple reasons of, if we could have got a better lawyer, all those things, and people throwing him under the bus and how our legal system works and stuff, he should never have been in there, altered him in ways that weren't great. Yeah. And so I just, that part we all mourn is man, I wish that wouldn't have had to be part of the story.
How many years was he in prison? A culmination of?
One of them was 14 months long. I'm not sure about the other one.
Okay. Yeah, we did some prison ministry up on the hill here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and there was a lot of it all stemmed back to stuff that came out, or they did while they were under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
Sure.
And being I don't remember even doing that, you know? And so lifelong, we're talking life in prison for something that they're like, I don't remember doing it. I don't even think I did it. You know, like we would hear a lot of horrific things that I just
kids.
Yeah, kids.
In blue uniforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, hard.
So how old is Philip at the point where you guys are starting to notice some darker behavior of sadness and like just depression and stuff?
I don't know. So Philip is 8 years older than Sarah and I. So I must have been 18 when I started realizing like, okay, we've got some stuff here. And then in my early 20s, like always just worried about him. Everybody's worried about him. I should say this too. I just feel like I have to, my siblings and I are super close, probably abnormally close for what siblings are. Like we speak to each other almost daily, including my brothers, including when Philip was in or out or whatever the scenario was, we stayed very close, which you would think it would divide us. But it didn't. And that's just a God thing, but it brought us closer together. And so I knew Philip very well because I had a flexible job working from home with the kiddos where I could call him when I was sewing and say, hey, what's the latest? What are you working on? That kind of thing. Yeah. My other brother was on the road, so I could call him and see what's going on. Sarah was in school, so I'd have to wait till she got out of school. But we were very, very, very connected, both emotionally, physically, and mentally, just knew each other really, really, really well. Mm-hmm. So picking up on his tendencies was very easy because I would know, like, okay, he's drinking. And some things he went through a really volatile, I shouldn't say volatile is not the right word, a messy divorce, which I'm sure those two words always go in the same sentence. I don't know that any of them are clean. But there was no closure for him. And that, of course, with his discernment was really important that there's a bow on it, that this has ended, and she did not let him have that. So that just was gnawing at him that he couldn't have some sort of closure from it. So I knew the addictions would flare during that time. And one time I was traveling home from running errands with the kiddos, which is part of my system that we can talk about. And I had bought this hat for him. We shared an affinity for fashion and loved it. I bought this really cool fedora hat. I was going to give it to him. And I was traveling home. Like I was on the Brandon Road. I was like close to home. And it was like, go give the hat to Philip today. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then I'm like, is that my thought or is that God's thought? What's going on? And then I just felt it really strong. So I had 2 kids in the car seats. I turned around on a field approach, went back into town, knocked on Philip's door. He was living in Sioux Falls at the time. And he answered the door and he was tremoring really, really bad. And I said, oh, I wanted to give you a hat today. He said, thanks, sis. And I knew right away. I'm like, what's going on? And he said, I'm trying to sober up. So he had been sober for I don't know how many hours, but the body craves it so bad that they go into this kind of shock. And I was like, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, I ate some pasta to try and like he was doing kind of all the excuses are like, not really excuses. He's trying to tell me like, this is what happened. A, B, C, D, like, this is what happened. How can you help me? And I was like, I feel like this is out of my hands. I think we need to call. I need to just take you in. So I called my parents and they advised the same thing. So I took him to the hospital and it's one of those moments where as a little sister, he stood in front of the attendant and she was kind of dismissive because she knew he was an addict. And he said, I'm here to admit myself I have an alcohol problem. And I knew that his whole, like, adult life. But to hear him, like, throw his shoulders back and have to, like, claim it was just weird.
Yeah.
But stood right by him with a kid on my hip and holding another kid's hand. And I was somehow, like, proud of him for saying, like, I need some help. So then they took him back. I called my dad. My dad came down, and then we just sat with him. Not a lot of words, but just sat with him because the truth was he was desperately trying to get sober, but it is such a gripping disease that you need help. And so it was like, Philip, there was no shaming involved or anything like that because at that point, the disease is just, I don't know how to say it, like maybe objective, but you're like, here's Philip, and then here's the disease, and we're going to go through this with you. Like, whatever it takes. So I can't remember what they gave him or what the procedure was there. But then after that, came to my house and we came up with a plan alongside my parents and my siblings. Was like, let's get him into rehab. And this is not his first time in rehab, but this was an in-person rehab. And that bought us some time. So that was good. And he was there and we visited him frequently and played the little yard games with my kids right there and everything. So that was, I don't know for sure, because sometimes you want the memories to get fuzzy, and thankfully we're 10 years out. So we reflect more on the good stuff and less about the process of the addiction and stuff. So I can't remember if the hat occurrence was the one that led to the inpatient care, or he came out to my house to do laundry, and he was playing beanbag with Gus, who was like 5 years old. And he went to toss it, and he flexed his arms out, and he had a seizure. And I had said right before that, I was like, we both tremor really bad because of blood sugar and stuff like that. So I'm like, hey, do you need a ham sandwich or something? He's like, yeah. I went inside to make that. And then when I came back out, I noticed his hands jumped. And then he had a seizure right there in front of Gus, who, that was like his hero. So then I didn't even know he would go here. I was holding him on a gravel road, just screaming for help and asking God for just like, please just buy us more time. And called an ambulance. The ambulance came. Not an ambulance, forgive me. An EMT on a motorcycle came, who was also drunk.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
He was an on-call EMT.
He was an on-call EMT who arrived drunk, and I could smell it from him. And then I'm looking at my brother who's past the seizure point. I knew enough from my lifeguarding years of what to do-ish. Believe me, I'm not educated at all, but I knew to put him on his side. And so he did survive the seizure, obviously. Waited for the ambulance. I was like, and I looked him straight in the eye. I'm like, you can't help him. You are in the same boat. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this like the Twilight Zone? Like, what? So then another ambulance came, and we actually told that ambulance to leave, that we could take him, and then made the phone calls and got him into inpatient care pretty quickly after that. But again, that was a seizure from desperately trying to get sober. And I think he was at 24 hours then. So it's those like just trying, they're gripping it so hard. And the person on the phone told me to give him a beer because it helps get them. And so that was another like, wow, there's a whole world here of education that I need to kind of understand, or it would be interesting to learn, which sounds disgusting, but you know, like I want to understand what he's going through so that we keep remembering that this is the disease. And yes, he is, he's Philip. So like, I just wanted to hold and keep it precious of like, don't judge him. Like the person behind there, like, you don't know him. Like, come on, give him a chance. So
thank you for that, Becca, because it is, boy, do I ever understand that fully.
Yeah, like, come on, just separate the two of them. It's no different if the person in front of you is having a heart attack. Mm-hmm. You would pull out all stops, right, to like help them. And alcoholism, whether it's the seizures or whatever they're going through, same thing. It's in the moment, though. It has metastasized to this. So please help this patient. Please stop doing the judging and all of that stuff. Just help. Do what you can to help them, and then we'll work through the rest. But that part's really difficult. So,
can you? I'm thinking of friends of mine who have either grown up Christian or turned away from the faith, or for one reason or another believe there is no God. And that experience that you had driving by where your brother lives and having the Holy Spirit talk to you, and you questioned it.
Yeah.
And there are people who go, well, you and your siblings are really close. So like, of course you would feel his pain, right? But can you unpack that a little bit? How did you know? And just what's your opinion on that?
Gosh, that's one of those questions that's always hard when they say, what does your faith mean to you? And I'm like, everything. I have a hard time like zooming out to be like, I just prayed a lot about Philip. I grew up in the church. I had my own separate experience where Jesus literally changed my life. I promised I would change my life at a campfire my sophomore year, and he did. And so I had a close relationship with talking with Jesus. So it was frequent for me to say, protect Philip today, make me attuned to anything that I can help with or be there for. And so that was just a moment that was given to me. But of course, it was an interruption to my day where I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But I laugh now because you hear about all the stories about so many of Jesus's miracles, he was interrupted.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, she's got him terrible at that one. Like terrible. Efficiency is awesome, but it's a terrible God. So anyways, I don't know if that answers that, but just being just being mindful of my siblings. If you don't believe in Jesus, just being mindful of someone, you will get nudges. And whether you want to believe that's the Holy Spirit or not, it is. He's in our conscious. Yeah. But listening to it is a trickier part, whether you're a believer or not. Yeah.
It is one of those things that you really can't explain to a non-believer. Like you and I, we're head thinkers, right? Mm-hmm. Would you say? And we're not pushovers, and we're not easily like convinced, just, oh yeah, there's a voice. It's like we think about that and go, yes, what was that? And we're critical about it, and yet we can't explain it. And it's just a real thing. Like when I turned around to go back to Heather, I can't explain it. I just know that there was something in me that went, you got to go back, got to work from home today. And I went, no, I don't. I don't work from home, Right. But something overcame my psyche, something that I can't justify away thinking that it was some mystical connection, or like, I must have saw something before I left. No, it wasn't that. It was like, it was a divine intervention that I can't explain it. So I just, I think that's such a valuable thing for people to hear what you said about, people who are really struggling with their faith and is there a God or not a God? Because that's one of those, to me, a proof. Oh, yeah. There's a God and he intervenes, he cares about you and he does things for you.
Mm-hmm. And it won't be always convenient.
Right.
Like that
With kids in the car. You had kids in the car.
Oh my gosh. I'm efficiency queen. I literally coach on it too. So I was like, we're not turning it around.
Yeah. We got things to do.
I was like, oh, here I am. Yeah.
For a fez. Do you say for a fedora? Fedora.
For a fedora hat. God knew, obviously he knows it all. And in that moment, he knew Philip needed you, needed God, and you were the vessel. Your relationships with your siblings they're just beautiful. I love the way you talk about them, the way that you respect them every time you do, and you share that. I've heard this story a couple times, and when you do share it, you say, I always want to be so respectful of my siblings because they also have a side of the story. Yeah. It's probably different because it's not the same encounters and same things. But after that moment, Becca, of the gravel road and being at your place, how much longer after that was it where Philip just had enough?
Maybe a year, maybe two. Maybe we got 2 years after the inpatient care. This was 4 times in special care, We had tried everything. So I always say that too, is like as a family unit, we tried everything just short of an exorcism, like just everything. But there was a really beautiful thing on the back of his program of like fighting a battle every day. Every single day he fought this battle. And so rather than looking at it as a massive fail, it's like, well, let's rejoice in the victories that he had. And that would be rejoicing in the amount of days that we got to have with Philip was pretty cool. And the depth of relationships that he established, even while sometimes not fully Philip and being altered, he was amazing. Like, I can't even imagine the impact that he had on people, because I know the small time he spent with people and at his funeral was unbelievable. Philip did die by suicide in 2014 and got a terrible phone call. He had lost the battle, if you will. And the 7 days following that was just, a rush of so many feelings that are, anger and sadness, but unfortunately also relief, which is a really hard one to work through because we don't have to babysit anymore or worry about them. But you don't want that for your parents. You don't want that for yourself. And it's just very, very involved. But one of the cool things, and maybe cool isn't the right word, so forgive me, Josh and Sarah, if you would pick different words, but while we were at his funeral, there would be people there that we had no idea where they came from, right? We're like, is anybody, like, we should go greet them and whatever. And this one guy, I think he was in one of my classes, but again, I only had 2 years at that new high school, so I didn't know everybody really well. But Sarah said, gosh, I feel like we should know that guy. And he came up to us and he said, I just have to tell you about my experience with Philip. And he said he checked him into the jail one night because he was on that 24/7 watch where they have to blow in a, what is that called? A breathalyzer to make sure that they're sober because he was on a watch or something like that. Yep. Anyways, and then he had to be in this holding cell while they determined if he had been drinking or not. And he had to hand in all of his things. And so he handed this gentleman his Bible. And this gentleman has to look through the Bible very closely to make sure there's nothing in there. And he said, I've never seen a Bible so immensely filled out and so personal. And he accepted Christ because of Philip's Bible moving through his line.
Wow.
So you're like, okay, like he changed a lot of people's life. And his voicemail on his phone was filled with messages from his students. He was an adjunct professor as well for construction. And it was filled with messages from these college students like, Philip, can you help me with this? And can you help me with this? And so those kind of things are fond. You know, they make us feel good about, again, the Philip that we knew separate from the disease. Just the coolest guy. Still really cool.
Did you say he was in construction?
Yes. Really hard worker. Construction. And then I think in construction his entire life. Engineering also. He won a couple of awards and through SDSU at the tech college. Really smart, good looking, really outgoing, but also reclusive too, because it would be too much and to handle all those emotions and stuff. I think that's why he used to kind of settle some things.
The way that you separate the person from the disease is really beautiful because a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And the judgment that comes behind it, it is because it is so prevalent now. I mean, there is the disease, but there's also the overconsumption. There's the crutch, you know, of the alcohol and different things, and the pull that it has on a person. There's a lot of people that have come into my life now that are just pleading and begging and saying like, this is the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my entire life and I can't do it anymore. And I'm like, please don't give up. Like, just don't give up. Like it is possible. It is a forever battle. Yeah. I do believe that God can redeem us to the point of like taking it fully from us. I do believe that, but it is a battle and I see it all over the place and it doesn't matter the level of money you make to not making anything. Like it's like it is after you for the rest of your life, and that is daunting.
And it's countercultural. We've normalized alcohol like it's a normal thing. Like our U.S. government decided it's a safe thing, and so when you hear someone who is in addiction through alcohol, you go, "Well," I think a lot of people think, "Well, that's
a choice.
You're bad. You shouldn't have done that." You know. Yeah. And what people don't understand is it really is. It's a disease. And I believe this about Heather, the choice was taken out of her hands. Or at the very least made very, very hard. And it wasn't because of
we have a choice.
Her choices.
But it is one of the hardest. It's one of the hardest.
Imagine trying not to breathe for a couple minutes. You need to breathe.
Yeah. Our bodies, we are wired to drink ourselves to death.
Just wired differently.
It's just
So I had this experience similar to what you're talking when you separate the disease from the person that really led me to dig into like, oh man, this is its own disease outside of Philip. And it was another binge and I was at my parents' house and I was giving the kids a bath upstairs. And I got this gut feeling I needed to go downstairs. And I knew Philip had come in and I couldn't. There were 2 kids in the bathtub. So I was like, Mom. So I yelled down the stairs, Mom, can you come up? And she came on up. I didn't tell her anything. And I went downstairs and I found Philip. And I was like, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? And I could tell that he'd been drinking and he was gathering up all my dad's guns. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to clean these. I go, no, you're not. Not tonight. And he looked at me and I looked at him. And then the battle started. Like we wrestled with each other, which was not normal at all. Like, yes, we were entertaining and fun, but not this. I knew I was like, I will not let you leave this house with this gun. He's like, knock it off. I'm just going to clean. I'm like, I can't trust that, Philip. And you know what? I can't trust that. And so we battled back and forth until, thank the Lord, I have long legs. I was able to grip the long, because it was a long rifle. I was able to grip it with my legs. And basically I won. He was shorter than I was. And I got him just outside of the door before I closed the door on him, just outside of the door. And a moment of clarity, looking in his eyes. And I said, Philip, it's Becca. And he let go. He let go of the grip. So it was enough of like, there he is. And there was a moment of clarity for him where he was like, oh my gosh, it's Becca. Shoved out the door and then came back the next day really mad. I thought he would be apologetic and it was the opposite. He was just madder than hops. So it's just part of the journey. But that was another clarity moment of God saying, go downstairs. I didn't want that moment. My son had to see some of the struggle there, so that wasn't good.
Yeah.
And my mom had to see the struggle, but I won ultimately to buy some more time.
Yeah. And good on you for really sticking to your guns. Bad word, but you know what I mean? Like you fought for that.
Oh yeah.
What in that moment, where did you find that strength to fight?
The love?
Yes, that I could see him. Like, Philip, we're going to fight this. We're going to fight this together. And the whole time we were fighting, if you will, I just kept thinking, I have to do this for Sarah. I have to do this for Joshua. I have to do this for my mom and dad. Yeah. I will not let him leave this house. I don't care what I have to do. I will not let you leave this house with these guns. I cannot. I would not let myself live another day. We wouldn't have slept that night anyway. So I was like, I'm going to do this. And I think he knew it too. I think he knew, like, all right, let's do this in battle. And that moment of clarity, I can still see his clear blue eyes, beautiful blue eyes. And I said, it's Becca. And he let go. He's like, okay.
And still came back, like you said. It's the chemical imbalance that the roller coaster that a alcoholic or an addict goes through with the, because coming back, he wasn't in the same state, right?
No.
And so it's like there's this roller coaster of the chemical. Oh, man. And to look, Amos used to call me the alternative Heather.
Yeah.
Not really understanding what I was going through, but he'd be
switch.
like, yeah.
It's tough because you want to defend him because I know how beautiful he is and how awesome he is. And so then when people would have a different experience, I was like, no. That's try again. Like, I promise this is a guy that you want in your circle. And so some of that justification gets tiring too, you know, because I'm like, no, you're not. He's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry that your whole family had to go through everything that they went through. But man, I just applaud you for never, ever giving up on him and your entire family. Like you fought a very, very tough battle. And some people will say, how can you say it was a relief? I've had other people shame other people for saying that in the world of suicide. And unless you understand the battle or you helped fight it with them, you can't understand it, and that is okay.
Right.
So instead of shaming someone for that, I've always said, if you don't understand it, it's probably better just not to say anything because you weren't a part of it.
Right. Well, think of Job.
Yeah.
you know, like the friends were trying real hard. They could have just been silent for another 7 days and we would have avoided reading 7 more chapters of what the bad advice they gave him. But grieving is so difficult with suicide. And I know that grieving in other deaths is difficult as well. The suddenness of death by suicide is so alarming. And the shame behind it. I'm like, okay, the suddenness is one thing to process, but the shame from the entire audience, like even at his funeral where you're like, just stop talking. Like, stop talking. Like, do the ceremonial hug and please move on. Unless you have something amazing to tell me that I don't already know about this amazing guy. Yeah. I don't want to hear your shame. Yeah. So that gets me a little fired up too. And the siblings and I would laugh about, we're like, what?
So at the moment you're at the funeral, people coming by and they feel the need to express how they're feeling.
Sure. Yeah.
To you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Funeral, not so much. They were pretty kind of, it was like the conversations afterwards, people want to know, you know, like what happened, and you just have to kind of protect, and every situation is different, I would imagine. So we just said it was tough. Yeah. It was tough, and pray for my dad and pray for my mom. And
how should people approach that?
Well, I would just say, I'm so sorry for your loss. Tell me more about them. And then if they go to the last couple of years about them, ask them to tell them earlier than that. Get to the part where it's good. Like, tell me what you loved about him or her and that kind of thing. And mostly just like, I'm so sorry for your loss, and sit with them, which is very difficult. I totally relate to that, but less words. Less words. Know? Yeah.
And using their name. I've heard multiple times people want their memory to stay alive. They want the memory, the good, like you said. Tell me about the good. We all know the struggle. We know the hard.
And tell me about the name. When you're prompted in it, because that guy, the jailer, whatever his name, whatever that job is, like for him to tell us that story probably took a little bit of like, I don't know if I want to do this in this moment. Is this the right moment? Yeah. But he probably, well, I don't think it was him, but the Holy Spirit prompted him like, they need to know this story right now. Because he didn't have to attend. Who knows why he was even looking at the obituaries that day? Who knows? But
through this, what you have gone through with Philip, and you have the Philip bag. We're going to have to, like I always say, a part 2 because time goes so fast, but your passion for sewing and where it comes from, and you developing these beautiful, beautiful hand-stitched, the bags that you create, we'll make sure to have your website and lead people to the beautiful creative side of yours. The Philip bag is a beautiful tribute to people, the mourning of someone and the loss of someone to keep their memory alive.
Yeah.
And so can you just share a little bit about that? Because I'm super excited to gift something that is to come.
Okay.
So
Okay. So I sew and design purses. I believe that when you create, you have joy, whether you're creating a purse or you're creating a spreadsheet, which is the opposite of creativity. It feels like analytical, but when you're creating something, there's a joy as you're creating this. Well, in the beginning, God created. It was the first verse. So I think that's where that initial joy comes in. So because I love, 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 love creating and going through this grieving process and going, why are there not more resources for, in particular, suicide? So I'll tell this part so that I can, why I did the bags too, is like, they have proven over and over, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention says if there are 3 phone calls placed strategically after an attempt, the chances of them making another attempt dive by like 80% or something. I will not know the exact percentage, but it's a huge percentage of it actually going down if there are 3 calls made within 2 weeks of an attempt. Well, we haven't, I don't know what the word would be. We haven't legalized that or legitimized that. We haven't like made that a thing. But like, if we could, doesn't that seem simple? Like if the cops are called, then it goes through a funnel where it's like, then a pastor calls, then a counselor calls, then a mental health professional calls the person to follow up with how are you now. Okay. Doesn't even have to be handing them resources, which obviously they would do, but it's just a touch point outside of family and friends of professionals that are like, I'm still thinking about you. That was a scary moment. If those 3 phone calls are placed within 2 weeks after an attempt, the chances for another one go drastically down.
Okay.
So the audience just definitely needs to know that. So that's just
beautiful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And if I got involved if I got involved politically, I would like fight for that. Like we need that to start happening right away. I think that would be, I know I will oversimplify it. Anyways, so going through this different grieving process and like wanting to hold on to things of his and to help people remember like, yeah, those were his last couple of years, but this is who Philip was. And like out of all of my siblings, he was probably the most hyper out of all of us. And I'm high energy. You should have seen this guy. He could levitate around. And I wanted to create a bag that I could do a portion of the proceeds to the AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, after reading some of their resources and things. And so I created this Philip bag that's just a basic tote bag, which is something that he would have carried on his construction sites. And so it was a very simple shape. Didn't matter if you're male or female, you could use this bag and take it with you. And then the inside of the bag, this started actually later, would be made from your loved one's shirt. So it'd be like a button-down shirt that we put on the inside. And so the project started with just creating the Philip bag, and $10 of every bag goes to the AFSP, and I write the checks quarterly, going on 10 years now. And then later, someone said, could you put their shirt? I don't think that was my idea. I think someone mentioned that, and I was like, yes, amazing. Yes. And so now we take loved ones' shirts and we put them inside a Philip bag so that they can carry their loved one with them forever.
And it's the lining on the inside.
It's the lining.
Yeah.
So it's like the inside. It's the good stuff of the human anyways.
Yeah.
So that's been a really fun project, which also led into the military project and taking military jackets for loved ones and honoring them. And again, the Philip tote and the honor projects don't mean they have to have passed. It's just honoring this person and having something tangible.
Mm-hmm. I love the sentiment behind all of that. We went through that too after losing Amos's brother to leukemia. And it was like, every time we would hold something that was his, it's like, oh, I don't want to, what do you do with it? Like, just hold it, look at it. Yeah. So that's, it's beautiful to be able to put it.
It's worth $0, but it's worth a bajillion dollars.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. That makes me think of in Philip's apartment. He had a file cabinet that was labeled with our names in it, or our kids. Like he would keep letters from us, or little colorings from us. And I'm like, oh my gosh! Like the humanness of that is like these were his treasures. It's pretty cool.
He probably tapped back into those in his dark moments.
I'm sure.
Lord knows I did.
He was not,
Yep.
I always say this too, is like, we don't ever feel like that he was alone in any of those moments. He loved Jesus. Like, he was not alone when he fought that last battle. He was not alone. He was being cradled and held and fought with. Mm-hmm.
Man. Mm-hmm. And he's up in heaven being the exact same magnetic.
Sends me so many reminders. And I'll call my siblings and be like, yep, I got a reminder today too. And it'll be like these random things. So when my clock turned 7:16, that was part of his phone number. Every time it turns 7:16, I have a Philip thought. I'm like, oh gosh, I wonder what he's doing right now. And then he, I gotta think here. There was a 1980s song playing shortly, like within 3 days of his passing. There was this 1980 song. Amos might know it better than I do, but it's "Please Forgive Me, I Know Not What I Do." Don't make me sing on the microphone. But it's like, please.
I don't remember it.
Anyways, 1980 song, and I was like, pounded the steering wheel. I was like, really? Dang it, anyhow, Philip. And it was so like. It was kind of this funny is like, because I had been there for some other attempts, I had a lot of guilt of like, why couldn't I have been there for this attempt to try to prevent something? Not that I have a hero complex. I'm sure I do have a hero complex, but it was very hard for me to not have predicted that this was going to be a moment and not to have picked up on some of the signs. So that really bothered me. Speaking of which I think people need to hear this out, is they will send some signs, and I'm sure the listening audience knows some of the signs, but one of them that really was like, I should have picked up on that, is that Philip started to call a ton of people in those last 2 weeks that he hadn't spoken to in quite a few years, like my cousin Toby. And Toby said, oh my gosh, Philip gave me a call the other day, and he was so upbeat, and we just caught up. And what Philip was doing is tying up loose ends to make sure everybody was okay, and to just cheer the other person on. He was saying goodbye. They just didn't realize it. And that is very common because they have a plan. So then they start to reverse engineer. What would I do? Because now I have the plan. And so I'm going to make sure all these people that I love know that I love them and what's special about them as they tie up their loose ends because of their plan. So that is a red flag. Yeah. So when they say I'm doing really, really good, but it might have been like a really, really bad day the day before, start asking questions, because that is the, okay, I know the plan now.
And so, what questions? What to ask? There's how are you doing? And you get back I'm fine. So then where do you go from there?
I'm not the expert, so I would not be the one to ask for that. But they do say to be as bold as possible. And do you have a plan?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you plan to commit suicide?
Just act. Do you have a plan?
Yeah.
Yep. Do you have a plan? Not be afraid of the words, but please, everybody, find an expert better than me to do that. But yeah.
Experience sometimes is even better advice because you've experienced it. So whether you're an expert or not, I do believe that there's a lot of wisdom that God has given you as for someone that has lost a loved one. So don't discredit yourself in that.
In the Air Force, we were told to up channel.
Yeah.
If we didn't have the words, if we didn't know what to say, we just felt something, up channel this to someone else who does know what to do or has the authority, or just has a different relationship, can ask those questions and probably get straight answers.
Yeah.
I had to do that one time when someone said they're going through a divorce, and so I up channeled it, and we sat down, and he asked the hard questions, and thankfully he's still with us today. But and maybe he's part of that conversation. But so if you don't have the boldness or don't have the words, don't just stop there.
Oh my gosh,
ask someone else for help.
Part of it is like, we hate being uncomfortable.
Yes.
But your uncomfortableness in that moment is pretty selfish. So you have got to, I'm sorry to call it, but you will be uncomfortable. But that will be worth it if it buys you time with this loving human that you care about. So like, get uncomfortable, get over yourself, get uncomfortable, work through it.
Mm-hmm.
And
regret is worse.
The question that follows that is, what do you have to lose?
Right.
The person. So let's be real. What do you want to choose?
It'll be an interruption. It'll be uncomfortable. It'll be all those things, but it's a person's life. So,
man, Becca, you have more energy, passion, excitement for life than, I mean, there's a reason that I've always been so drawn to you for that reason. And like, for someone who is doing life to the fullest. And of course, like we have said, we are fallible. We're sinners. We are not perfect, but dang, I love life and I want others to love life. And I have walked through the uncomfortable. I have been through the uncomfortable, not just that, but your own, like the stuff that is hard, even as a mom, a wife, like all of it, protecting your children, standing up for your children. Like you have went to battle a lot. And I love that about you. And you go to battle for people that you don't even know. Hence your podcast, The Encourager. Hence your, you've created an entire program to help women because you understand how tough it is for women to walk through being moms, wives, entrepreneur, your creative side. And we can so easily fall short with not fall short, but like just the exhaustion that can put us in a really tough place. And so as we wrap up here, I just want you to, and it's not even a self-promotion, but selfishly, that is okay. I really believe in my heart that you have something to offer anybody who is searching for the beauty and the joy that comes from Christ, marriage, kids, all of it. There is this yumminess that comes from you because you've done the work. And so can you do that? Can you plug what you're doing, why you're doing it?
Well, I would say this. When I end my Facebook Live events for Rebekah Scott Designs, I always say, if you wonder where all this light and energy comes from, it's Jesus. Know him, love him, and pursue him. So when anybody says like, man, you're really energetic, where does this come from? I point them straight to Jesus because that's what it is. I can't even drink a lot of caffeine. I would just levitate. So the only way that I can explain that is that it's Jesus. Like all the things that I've been through and the bounce back and the things that drive me in the passionate world for podcasting is that I think there's a lot of messages out there that we can't do both home and work life. We have to choose between the two, whether it's hourly or daily or weekly. It's like, today I was a fantastic businesswoman. I killed it. Man, I was a terrible mom today. And then it'll be the reverse. And I don't think that you have to do that. I am living proof that you don't have to do that. And the key piece in the last couple of years as it really developed is like, I think you can do it with joy. Let's stop believing this grind stuff. So I really dial in on my podcast and when I'm coaching women is to help them really find their joy spot, like where it is it in the creative process, which it is, but what is it that you're creating? And that undoing the messaging that you got to choose. I think you can do both. I mean, I was told a lot of messages that I couldn't be a designer in the Midwest. I'd have to move to the coastlines. Joke's on you. Look at me. Look at me. So like I feel passionate about telling people like, don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do. Yeah. Like, come on, let's do this.
Limiting.
Yes.
So limiting.
Yes. Especially when they say, that's a great big dream. I love your dream. Hey, wait until he's 5 when he's in school. And I'm like, what? Why would you say that? If the Holy Spirit has put something on your heart, or even it's just your big dream of whatever, and it doesn't even have to be whole and nice. It's just like, I just really want to do this. Great. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. I think that you can do all things at 1%, which we can. I mean, 1% is one sentence, one Google search, one phone call, one email. So the majority of my coaching is just reminding women that you can do both really well, both home and work life. And you can do both with a ton of joy behind it as well, especially when you're leaning into how God uniquely created you. Speaking of trademarks, I did trademark the phrase, own who you are, because I think it's really important that women do live into that and stop becoming what the world tells us we should become or whatever the thing is. Like who you are is just awesome. So let's just own that. And then I like developing that in women. So I created a couple different programs. You can listen to my podcast, but I also have a cohort that's starting in January. And this I really feel like is the strongest point after 8 years of podcasting that I think is going to be the best, most momentous group because it's just 10 women. It's limited to 10 women and it's coaching every single week for 10 weeks on my systems. So I think all of us, whether we're male or female, have these 5 pillars, if you will, of systems. You have a me system, how you're taking care of yourself. How do you get a full charge? Everybody's different. You know, mine is going to be Jesus and burpees. Some people's is a nap. That's okay. That's okay.
Jesus and burpees.
Yeah, Jesus and burpees. We were good friends. And then there's a food system, answering the question, what's for supper? Because that lays on us all day long. There's a lot of mental bandwidth around that question. And then there's your home system, making your home a sanctuary. When you walk in that door, that you're not like, duh, I got all these tiny chores to do, which you might, but I'll help coach you to like get some systems set up so it feels more like a sanctuary and less like another to-do list. Then there's a family system, and that I want to build very, very foundationally with these women, because if your home and your family are set up for success, the business will be an amazing thing. But those two things need to be set up for success so that the business can accelerate. And I don't think they can do either. It can for a certain amount of time until one falls apart. Mm-hmm. So we don't want your family and your home system to fall apart. So we set up really firm foundations for those. And then the last one is your work system, which we all love, especially if you're a doer like me. Like, that's answering the questions: who am I working with? What am I working on? How am I going to do it? Why am I doing this? All those. So the work system, everybody that I coach really likes that part because we kind of know how to do that. But I make them go through the other systems first so that those are firm foundations so we can accelerate the business.
Nice.
Isn't that fun?
That sounds great.
Love it.
So good. The best part about it too is, like, yes, I'll give you examples of how I do it because people want to know, you have 4 kids, 20 employees, and you farm and ranch. How is this happening, right? So I'll give you examples, but I will be hyper watching these 10 women to find out where their face lights up. And when I say food system, if they glaze over, I'm like, great, you do not like cooking, do you? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, well then let's figure out what your food system is, because it may not be you cooking. But we still need to make some decisions because we do all have a food system. So I love that this environment will be a very intimate environment for me to pick up on the cues of, like, wait a minute, that is the 3rd time you have said this about yourself, and that is not true. So this group right now, we need to affirm this woman. And so I'm really excited about it.
Great. Is this over Zoom or is this in person?
It's over Zoom.
Yeah. And where can people find the next cohort?
Yes. You can sign up at theencouragerpodcast.com and look for the cohort tab at the top.
Great.
So the last thing I want to lead into that, because we are out of time. Amos is like, no, there's not one more thing. Nope.
Did I get off that, Bob?
Can I, everybody has to have, this is something I will stand behind and I will dig my heels in, that every single person needs to be learning and growing or they're dying.
True.
Because if you are not, and you are just going through the motions and you're like, oh, this isn't working. Oh, my family. Oh, it's like, okay, hold up. So who does Becca go to? Who have you gone to as someone that you love and admire and look up to? Because the joy comes from the Lord, but you have to also have accountability. So who do you tap into, Becca?
My husband, he's always a very good, like, cheerleader, believe it or not. And people, if they know Nick, are like, he's a cheerleader? Yep. He doesn't ever tell me to get a job, so that's good. He rides the wave with me. So Nicholas is a good source of, like, discernment for me also. He'll sniff it out long before I do because I'm so enthusiastic. So he's one of my, like, good advisors. Joshua and Sarah, both my siblings, full of joy, full of trauma as well. And we like to encourage one another. I love Bob Goff. Bob Goff, to me, he dreams really big, and half of the dreams that he accomplished has not been by earning millions, which he does. And so he's a big inspiration. I just got to talk with him this week. He's awesome. Like, he dreams at the size that I will be at one point. And then I'm really enjoying, just recently, Megan Fate, because tragedy and trauma and grief, and mostly grief in her life, has really helped me to still process.
Okay. How do you spell her last name?
I think, but you guys might have to look this up. Fate, Megan Fate.
Fate, like the actual, okay.
I think, but let's look it up.
Megan Fate, okay. That's one I haven't heard of, so I appreciate that. I love when I learn.
I think I sent it to you.
Did you? Okay. I probably did listen to it then. Okay. Because anything you send me, I listen to.
Me too. Vice versa.
Okay. One other thing too, if you cannot, like you and I had talked about, since I'm a fundraiser and I love fundraising, I love supporting people, I love finding ways to financially help people grow. That is such an important thing, because I believe that finances are not the end all be all. Why? Because people will say, oh, I just don't have the money for it. But nope. I am like
1% that baby.
There will be somebody who wants to see you grow, and it takes just a simple ask. And so I'm going to be bold and ask, if you're a business leader or you are somebody who is out there that has a wife, a friend, a mom, an aunt, I don't care who it is, that you're thinking, man, they could really use some Becca. Yes. They could really use some Rebekah. The course in this cohort will change your life. It will change their life. If you want to see the people you love around you grow like crazy, pay the money to put them through this cohort. And a business can sponsor their employees. There is educational leadership out there. She is worth it, and your employees and those you love are worth it.
It's interesting. You could put the same concepts together. If you want them to be more joyful in your workplace, we do the practical things that allow them that freedom to be joyful. I know it sounds simple, but we are ninjas at the practical things so that the joy can be huge when they get to the workplace.
I see companies putting thousands and thousands of dollars in sales training.
Gross.
If you have a person who has this ability to do sales but doesn't have the time, the attention, or the bandwidth to do it because their home life and their marriage and all these things is just not clicking.
Yeah.
You get that right, dude. Your salesperson will take your company and double it.
It's so funny.
Just by getting that.
If you just remove what's for supper, you'll get an extra hour out of them every day.
Yes,
I promise.
Yes.
Life doesn't stop when you walk in the front door of work.
Oh my gosh.
Like all that stuff comes with you.
Especially as a woman. Yes.
And,
I mean, I'm sure for men, but especially as a woman.
You also are a speaker. So if there's anybody who's looking for someone like you to stand in front of a crowd and just amp them up and start a wildfire. Becca, yes. Gosh, can you imagine both of us on stage? We would like...
Burpee challenge.
Oh, that sounds awful.
I
just say I think burpees were created at the fall.
Could be.
Yeah, this is how I feel about this. Yeah.
Gosh, this has been so good. So good. So we'll get your information out there. Becca, we will be able to have people follow up with you. You are, even though you are a mystery to me, you make yourself available to those that really do want to excel and just love the Lord the way that you do, the way that we all do. It's like, come on. So we appreciate that you make yourself available even to our audience today. Yeah. Just you are just proving that you are the light of the world because God shines through you. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Remember to listen to the tiny nudges, as that was brought up several times here. So I would just advise everybody, those tiny nudges, please stop, listen. It'll prevent some things.
That's great. Thanks, Rebekah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. We want to change lives through this podcast. And if you want to support this podcast or our guests, please see the links below for our Patreon and giving links.
And like and subscribe and also share our podcast as much as possible. Thank you.